Hi, my name is Sebastian and I'm glad to be here today on behalf of our team from the Virtual Environments and Computer Graphic Group at University College London. And I want to tell you about our project Ubiq, an open source social virtual reality platform for research and teaching. Now right away, Ubiq itself is not a research project. It's software that's meant to support research, put together from the contributions of a number of different projects within our group going back a number of years. Ubiq rather is a toolkit. It consists of a Unity package, sample code for different platforms, assets and documentation. And its purpose is to implement the networking and social aspects of distributed experiments. And the motivation specifically is social VR experiments. Social VR is very successful. There are over 160 different systems and the top 3 have a combined market cap of over $60 billion. And this raises the question, given all these platforms, why try and build another one? And the answer is because of how popular it is. Social VR is not by any means a solved problem. There are many outstanding questions, some of which I'll come on to. And currently, if you want to answer them, you have to reinvent the wheel. You need to integrate a low-level library or implement your own networking stack. And that's because research has some key requirements that commercially maintained systems simply will not address. Now, in most cases, this is just because they are benignly ignored, as the market for them is tiny. However, in some cases, the requirements for research and the business model actively conflict. And this is true of social VR applications and some game-focused networking libraries as well. Examples of some of these important requirements would include accessibility, data protection, remote code execution, interoperability, and transparency and logging. It's important that a research platform can be used by non-experts and students. The system must be flexible enough that where necessary, users can control things like avatar appearance and behavior, or implement their own networked objects. For user studies, data protection is a real concern, but libraries that use the platform as a service model may transmit data through unknown servers in non-compliant countries, violating regulations such as the GDPR. And even simple experimental protocols can be complex to implement. Deciding who does what when, giving instructions, calculating feedback. These things usually require coding. But being able to execute code on remote participants' machines is, for obvious reasons, very rare. Scripting languages or similar safe approaches often just aren't up to the task. The most flexible solution is to use native platforms like Unity, but few, if any, functional SVR platforms make their code available for this. Now, these requirements and many others aren't just a thought experiment. All of these are things that we have implemented in various distributed experiments in our group over the years. Last year, we had to change our VR module from in-person to remote teaching with relatively short notice, and we needed a platform in which the students could complete their coursework. Over a number of months, we tried as many of the most popular free SVR platforms as we could get our hands on. Now, we thought highly of a lot of them, we had fun in them, and still meet regularly in one or two. After all, they are very popular for a reason. But while many could fulfill one requirement or another from our list, there wasn't one that didn't disqualify itself in some way for research. And the most common reasons for this were remote code execution and data protection, followed by instrumentation and representation flexibility. So Ubiq has been designed to address these outstanding requirements. Ubiq is at its core a messaging library with a number of key services that implement common SVR functions. Each represents an aspect of an SVR system that a researcher may want to modify themselves, such as avatars, object spawning, or voice chat. Above these are a very small number of very complete samples, and these samples implement a fully functional social virtual reality application. You download the project, press play, join a room and talk, and it just works out of the box. Now, everything in the project, including all the 3D assets, is open source with permissive licenses, and variously these include the MIT, Apache, Creative Commons Zero, etc. They're permissive for both academic and commercial use so that you can open source your experiment code if you want it. The way we would imagine Ubiq being used is an experimenter would say download the project, copy the Hello World introductory scene, swap out the environment prefab for their own, possibly add their own networked objects, add their logging events, and then build an executable to send to their participants. Ubiq deliberately targets niche use cases, the cases where researchers previously would have had to build a whole networking stack to test out one idea. And that mainly means making design decisions that don't preclude certain use cases. Ubiq is inherently peer-to-peer, using application layer multicasting. Users send messages between scene graph objects, i.e. Unity components. Conceptually, instances of components talk to their equivalent instances at different peers. A networked object is implemented entirely within one class, following the familiar Unity programming model. And if you're not doing networked research, your code starts and ends here. But by controlling which objects talk to which, you can implement unicast communication or client-server communication as well. Ubiq does have an optional server for rendezvous and relay over the public internet. This uses the concept of rooms to build groups of peers that should exchange messages, allowing a single server to support many groups and projects at once. Rooms can be joined using pre-shared secrets, user-friendly join codes for interactive room joining, or longer-form GUIDs for persistent rooms, for example, for running self-directed experiments over a long time. The server is meant to be easy to deploy. It's implemented entirely in Node.js and doesn't require anything outside NPM, so it can be downloaded and started in just a couple of commands. And we also make our development server publicly available so you can start right away with just the client code. Voice chat is based on WebRTC. This is the stack that underlies voice chat in modern browsers, and it's now an official IETF specification. Ubiq uses a native port of the spec, making it easy to maintain on all platforms targeted by Unity, as well as making possible interaction with other WebRTC-capable platforms such as browsers. Ubiq has its own avatar and object spawning systems and distributed event logging framework. This allows arbitrary events to be gathered at one location from all peers in distributed experiments, and users also have access to events generated by the system itself. The only way to be sure a design works, though, is to use it for real. There are a number of research projects actively using Ubiq inside and outside of our group. These projects range from exploring server-side scalability techniques, to applications to allow theatre troupes to meet and rehearse, to experiments on how varying immersion affects group dynamics, to capturing dyads to generate believable computer-controlled avatar behavior, to mixed reality telepresence. And large external projects include Carousel and Science, as well as a number of individual users. Ubiq is still very young, and while some of the project code is older, the project itself is only a year old. We're still trying to get parity with existing systems for some modalities, and I'll be the first to say there is still some technical debt. However, we are constantly making improvements, and our roadmap is available online. Our immediate goals are additional samples to show how to bring in data from external programmatic sources, features to allow medium-scale group sizes, and improvements in recording support for audio. So that is our project. I'd like to say again, I'm speaking on behalf of a very large team who all deserve credit. I hope you might find Ubiq useful, and if you are thinking about using it for your own project, or you just want to discuss the technical details, please do get in touch. Otherwise, thank you very much for listening.